Good afternoon, one and all. Welcome back to the next keynote speaking session on this today's International CEO Conclave Meet. The next keynote speaker for today's Conclave Meet is Mr. Thomas Kuruvilla. He will be delivering his speech on transformation journeys, the reasons why, and the art of how. I would like to buy a bit of audience time to introduce the versatile persona that he is. Mr. Thomas has led many public sector transformational engagements on economic development and digital transformation across industries such as transport, telecom, healthcare, real estate, and smart city. Mr. Thomas is also a part-time faculty at prestigious institutes like IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, and Udaipur, covering international business strategy courses, family conglomerate strategy and governance, strategy management consulting. He is also an elite member of the industry advisory panel of SP Jain School of Global Management and is also a speaker in conferences in the areas of corporate governance, international business strategy, turnaround management, and corporate venturing. He is a member of the global board of Author-Agility since 1998 and is responsible for its operations in Middle East and Singapore. He is also the head of the strategy and organization practice in South Asia and Middle East. He was also selected as a pilot officer with the prestigious Indian Air Force to go along with these appointments. So we, the batch of Exceller XPGM class of 22, are extremely delighted and honored to have you here today. Over to you, Mr. Thomas. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Arjun, for this wonderful introduction. The introduction sounds very, very good, but I hope I can meet up to the expectations that that the introduction has created. I can see that we have around 135 participants, right? I would not like to have a very detailed presentation, a one-way presentation. My expectation is that I will go through some slides very quickly, and I would like to have quite an interactive session. And during the presentation, feel free to raise questions. I guess there are facilities for people to raise hands and ask questions, correct, Arjun? Yeah, okay, good. Can you see my slide?
Yes, sir, we can see.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. Good. Let me start by giving a summary of what I would like to convey today. This is a message I have covered in few of the previous similar seminars with other institutes and industry conclaves. It is more about the learning that we have had from the COVID-19 situation, in which we were expected to eliminate human intervention, and wherever we are not able to eliminate human intervention, the business was almost collapsing during COVID-19, right? But at the same time, there are many businesses that doubled or tripled their value when they were able to conduct the business without human intervention or very limited human intervention, right? The point that we could observe is that it is not only that you were able to conduct a regular business, which was not possible because of COVID. There was a significant improvement in the outcome, or lower investments, very high outcome, and the value of the business significantly improved during COVID-19 for businesses that have been able to run with very limited human intervention. So the point I would like to make throughout the discussion today is, what can we do to almost automate whatever is practically possible? Because if something can be automated and you still ask a human being to handle it, I'm sorry to say it is a disaster. It's a disaster, right? Because human being is not able to repeat with precision. There are a lot of emotions in the picture. There are a lot of things that is disturbing them. A lot of things happens in human beings, right? So it is nowhere comparable to a machine or something that is automated when it is something that can be repeated, right? Number one. Number two, again, I can go through many examples and prove it to you that any business that you digitalize, there is a significant value that gets created. And my not guess, we have done at least 15-20 projects in the last 2 years once COVID started, and every single business we have been able to close double the value of the business. And I can give any single example from any sector and prove it to you with actual inputs and data, and where this 30 to 40% improvement is going to come from, right? And it also means that once you're handing over repetitive activities to machines, human beings will start handling significantly higher value added activities, which means the compensation that we can give to people can be much higher. Just to take a simple example, I always like to give an example of taxi hailing or Uber or Ola, because it is something that people can relate to. Or maybe we can even give an example of a hotel, right? See, in the past, when we were not using mobile phones or applications to order a taxi or order food, the number of people that is required to generate the same business was significantly higher, and the same lesser number of people are able to generate more business, by which the value added by a human being is much higher, and hence he can be compensated much higher. All of this means that business leaders, I am assuming that all of you will be running businesses or running some departments in the very near future. And when you get into your day-to-day activities of managing a business or developing a strategy or deciding how to run your company, it is very, very important to consider these facts and see what can be completely automated, where we can eliminate any possible physical human interventions, and then it will be a completely different business model. Yeah. Before I get into the changes in the business model, I just wanted to give you some thoughts, because we do a lot of work on COVID-19 and the vaccine. There were some expectations around 1.5 years back when it started that things will go back to normalcy in 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. It is definitely not going to be the case, right? It is going to keep coming in waves. I don't see the wave ending anytime in even 2 years or 3 years. What is going to happen is you will never have a complete shutdown, because the world economy cannot afford to completely shut down, because then nothing will happen. The poor people will not have food to eat. There is no economic activity, there is no income, and people will die, right? So actually the number of deaths will be much higher than a situation where you have some little bit of COVID if you completely shut down. So the logic of shutting down the economy completely so that COVID gets eliminated is not possible, because people will starve and many more people will die if you shut down the economy. So what will happen is you have to shut down, and when COVID starts getting under control, then you will open it up, and when you open it up again, COVID will come back, and you will have this multiple waves. And we have to start assuming that the current situation is business as usual, right? We should not be saying that, oh, let us wait for COVID to be over and then we will do something as normal. That's not the case. Yeah, I can see somebody raising their hand. Anirudh, yeah, go ahead, please. Anirudh, Saxena, your hand is raised. If you want to say something, please go ahead. Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. You may want to speak up a bit louder. Yeah.
Sir, actually, I just heard what you said about the global shutdown, and it increases the economy also. So I wanted to ask you the for this, because if we shut down the economy, then the cases will again rise, and if we don't, then the more number of people will get infected with this. So what is the ultimate solution then?
The ultimate solution is vaccination. The ultimate solution is only vaccination, because if you look at any such diseases in the past, any diseases that has been spreading in the world, it is not the first time that that something like this is happening, right? We had many such diseases, but COVID has been by far had the highest impact. But it is all resolved by vaccination. You cannot, it is impossible to have a world in which people don't interact with each other. Then why, I will even ask, why are we living then? What is the point of living in this world if you're not able to interact? So there's always a fundamental balance, a fine balance that we need to have, right? Because of COVID, when we shut down the economy, do we know how many people died in India because of poverty, no money to eat, there were suicides and all of that? So it is not appropriate to assume that, you know, shutting down and to eliminate COVID and reduce the COVID deaths is a much better proposition than, you know, little bit allowing people to move and the business to continue, and little bit of COVID death will happen until the complete world is vaccinated and COVID is eliminated. Yeah. Again, I don't want to give an impression as if I'm right. This is just my view, right? All of you have the same information. I don't have any extra information by which I can come up with a much more insightful conclusion. It is just based on my own experience, our own studies, and you can make your own conclusions, and maybe there are different conclusions, right? If there was a very specific right answer to this, everybody in the world would have done the same thing, right? But if you look at what India is doing, what UK is doing, what US is doing, everybody is following different logics, right? So it's also, I must admit, why I sound quite loud and confident. I would not like to say this is the only way to handle it. This is my personal view of how this has to be handled, right? You cannot shut down the economy. You should not assume that things will get eliminated and the world will go back to normal situation, and hence at that time let us start doing normal business. If any company, at least all the clients that I'm advising, if anybody says, Thomas, let us wait for 1 more year, it's a disaster. Consulting, we did not stop. We did not stop consulting at all. We actually stopped for 2 to 3 months. It was a disaster. People had mental sickness. Our consultants who were sitting at home, not able to work, not interacting, shut down, or mentally got retarded, by the way. Can you imagine that, right? So we cannot afford for a shutdown at all anymore, because the implications are much more serious than a little bit of COVID spreading out. Yeah. Any other question? I'm happy that you can have I don't have to go through all the slides. It may be just boring for me to present some slides and things like that. That is not my intention. So I would like to have it quite interactive. Yeah. Any other questions? Should I move on? Okay, good. I guess you can hear me, right?
Yes, sir, you can go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Okay. No. Another one very quick input. It may be very obvious, but it is very easy to understand or predict what will be the impact from such a situation, right? Because you can actually classify any sector into something that is non-essential, essential, and something that is related to connectivity, right? So any industry that is non-essential, which is related to tourism, enjoyment, fun, movies, that is not essential for our day-to-day living, that has been significantly impacted, like 60 to 80% drop in tourism, hotel, leisure, movie, whatever is not essential will always be significantly impacted when people movement is not allowed. Marginal impact is normally for services that is essential. In all countries, public administration and defense will never be impacted by any situation, because you need to have the government services running and you need to protect your country from neighbors bombing or something like that, right? You cannot say COVID has come, so let me not protect the country. That doesn't work. So 100% of the countries will have public administration and defense, which is essential. And most of the developed countries consider healthcare and education also as essential services, which means irrespective of what happens with COVID or whether the world shuts down or doesn't shut down, you will also run healthcare and education, and both healthcare and education, in addition to public administration and defense, will not be impacted, right? And what will always have a very positive impact is everything that is related to enabling you working from home, which is connectivity, broadband, telecom services, media, e-commerce, all of them. The value of all the businesses in connectivity, in media, and e-commerce have almost doubled or tripled during COVID, right? So if you want to quickly predict what is going to continue booming and what will not boom, it's very easy to classify them into these 3 buckets, right? Non-essential services will go through a disaster. Essential services will maintain almost as is, and whatever is related to connectivity will have a significant improvement in the value. And it is very much possible to move some businesses from non-essential to booming. For example, ordering food from home, right? Instead of cooking. You can even think very carefully to move something from one category to another category and avoid a negative impact and try to move it to a positive impact. Yeah. Obviously, there were significant economic benefits. It was very, very clean. I'm sure that all of you realized that the world was a much cleaner place during COVID. Yeah. Some quick additional inputs is that we did multiple studies on whether people will continue digital buying, and the conclusion that we had from various studies is that if 100 people started using digital or e-commerce, I'm not talking of people who were already digitally buying things before COVID. if there are additional new people, 100 people who started using digital channels during COVID, 75% of them will continue. They will not go back to the old ways. Only 25% of them are expected to go back to the old ways when everything comes normal, right? Work from home, whatever work has moved to work from home during COVID, based on our very extensive study, at least 50 to 55% of them will continue remaining working at home. It doesn't that everybody will not go back to the office. Approximately only 50% of the work that has shifted to home will go back to the office, and remaining 50% is expected to continue working from home. Okay, yeah. Any questions? Please raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Now, let me give some quick inputs about what we mean by digital transformation. So, digital transformation is not just about digitalizing something that we are doing. You need to update the complete customer experience, the type of service he is getting, the way the infrastructure is configured, and the cost to deliver the service has to significantly come down, right? Because when you are digitalizing a business, you are eliminating a lot of unwanted activities which is created by human beings and human beings handling things. So it is digital transformation is not about just digitalizing an existing operation. It is completely transforming the way the business is being conducted, right? Even we can take the example of ordering food from home and food getting delivered, or you taking the Ola. It is actually a digital transformation. It is not just a simple digitalizing and repeating the same activity that we used to do on a digital format, right? Let me skip this slide because I think I would have mentioned this. Just some more quick general inputs before I get into one or two specific examples. I don't know whether you're aware of the impact of artificial intelligence. DHL, okay, first of all, every company that has a lot of information has a lot of value. If you're wondering why companies like WhatsApp, Facebook, YouTube has a very, very high value, it is not because they make a lot of money. They actually lose a lot of money. All these digital companies have a very high valuation. I'm not talking about cash. It's because they can use a lot of data to predict things that many of us cannot predict who doesn't have all the data. So if a company has the highest data, they tend to have the highest value in this world today. There's a very direct correlation between availability of data and the valuation of a company. And that's for many examples, like for DHL, since they're one of the leaders in cargo movement across the world, they are able to predict 3 months of global trade levels, which even US government was not able to predict it, or the UK government was not able to predict it. So even large organizations or International Monetary Fund or World Bank, the predictions that these large public entities, world banks who are giving loans, even companies like DHL is able to have a much better prediction than these organizations because of the data that they have and able to predict using artificial intelligence and able to predict what is going to happen, right? Just another very interesting example, right? In the past, when somebody identifies that a mango has been sourced wrongly, right? It used to take almost 6 to 7 days. Somebody want to say something? Yeah. It took around 6 to 7 days for them to actually identify where are these fruits located and eliminate it from the shelf. And you can imagine the disaster that has already happened. A fruit that has been identified which is unhealthy for consumption remains on the shelf for another 6 to 7 days. In my views, 90% of them would have been taken home and would have been consumed already. But by implementing blockchain, within 2.5 seconds, they are able to pinpoint exactly, assuming their stickers are there, by the way, it should be tagged. I'm just using mango as an example, right? Yeah, but this is a real case, right? As long as you're able to tag the mangoes and put the stickers and it is scanned, it goes through the system, within seconds, they are able to identify where these spoiled fruits are, and they are able to eliminate it from the shelf within seconds, instead of waiting for so many days by which people consume it and the effects are already there. Yeah. Yes, go ahead. Somebody has raised the hand, please.
Sir, I would like to know, waiting for economy to revive at times makes people restless. What should be a good approach in your opinion during this waiting period, as there would be multiple waves as illustrated in W wave?
No, I miscommunicated what I intended to say. I don't think the economy is going through a downturn today. No. Nobody is waiting for the economy to recover. Economy is already recovered. If you look at the GDP growth across the world and the GDP growth in India, economic activities are almost back to normal because you're allowing people to move. You see what I'm saying? So economic activities will be stopped if you stop people from moving, and that people are not doing it. The world is very cautious today. They are not going to lock down. I don't think they will lock down. So if you don't lock down, economic activities will not drop. And the point I'm trying to make is, even if COVID is not forcing you to handle things digitally and not allowing people to interact, you should not do that. You should still not allow people to interact from a business perspective. It should be more on a social. You want to meet people, be friends, have some fun and all of that is fine. Or you're having entertainment with people. But for business purposes, wherever practically possible, my suggestion is eliminate human interactions, because every time you have an human interaction when it is not required, you are actually creating a disaster. I can prove it. You see? Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Clear? Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. Just one more example is Amazon. Around 25% of the movements in Amazon warehouse today is controlled by robots. And when human being, 96% of the errors that was made by human beings in the Amazon warehouse has been eliminated by robots. 96%, right? So we need to quite understand the implications of the ability of artificial intelligence, robotics to come in and replace human beings and provide a service that is significantly much better than what a human being can provide. Yeah. Just one more input. If you look at the replacement of human by machine, wherever it is more information processing, wherever it is repetitive, it is predicted that by 2022, machine will have a higher percentage than human. For example, information and data processing and things like that. But when you go up the slide, you will see that something where you need intelligence, something that is not predictable, there the percentage of human intervention will still remain quite high. I will share the slides with the organizer and they will share it with you, right? You don't have to take notes or try to copy anything. I will give you the full PowerPoint presentation and you will have it for yourself later. Yeah. So it is again very clear that over a period of time, human beings are being replaced by machines as we progress. This is again actual data. This I already mentioned that in Amazon, robots are actually replacing people, and the value from that is quite high. Just one very interesting observation, because I'm actually in the middle of that in Dubai. It's about just 3D printing. People always felt that construction is one of the most laborious or human intensive industry in the world, construction. We are now talking about 3D printed buildings. You can print a building in 2 to 3 days, right? When you're printing it, if you required 100 people to build something, when you do 3D printing, it gets reduced to 2 to 3 people, right? So even the most human intensive or laborious activity like construction, I don't think people could have predicted that you can eliminate human intervention in that. So in Dubai in 2016, 2017, buildings have been printed in 17 days. And going forward, around 25% of the buildings is supposed to be 3D printed by 2030. Now, there's already a huge tall building. I'm not talking of single stories, double story buildings. I'm talking of skyscrapers being built using 3D technology, right? So again, significant elimination of human beings, right? Any questions? Please raise your hand. Yeah. So the point I wanted to make is that we have to really relook at how business is being conducted. The business models that we used to follow is almost, I cannot imagine a single industry following the same business model that they used to follow 3 to 4 years back. I'm talking of just 3 to 4 years back. If anybody wants to pick any example, I can explain to you what they used to do even as early as 4 years back, and how that business model is completely inappropriate today. And I have a view that even this will completely change going forward, right? And that is what we call like something like digital disruption, right? It is not about just digital transformation or using digital means of doing the same activity. You're completely changing the business model. Yeah. Now, let me get into some specific examples. So it's already 30 minutes. Let me try to finish it another few minutes and then we can get into a Q&A. All of you are quite familiar with taxi hailing example, right? What do you think are the benefits when we start using Ola or Uber to get taxis today?
On demand, whenever we want it.
What is the benefit? What are you saving?
So we no need to purchase it and keep it in the parking space itself.
Sorry?
We no need to purchase and keep it placed in the parking space itself during the COVID time. People who had cars, but they can't travel.
So what is the economic benefit? Where is the saving coming from?
The depreciation, that is amount, that is accounting. You can save that depreciation.
Okay. What else? What percentage do you think is the depreciation in the whole taxi hailing industry? Let us say the whole taxi hailing industry cost is around 100. What do you think is depreciation in that?
5 to 10%.
5 to 10%, right? So you're talking about a saving of 5 to 10%. I will go through this example and I can show you how you can save up to 60 to 70%. I'm not talking of 5 to 6%. I'm talking about 60 to 70%. I can show how we can save just on taxi hailing. I'm trying to see whether you can guess where the savings are coming from. Anybody wants to try? Yes, go ahead. Jugal. You have to unmute, Jugal.
So driver salaries.
So what percentage is that cost when the salary is this? How are you saving the driver salary?
So we need not to pay for, driver, right?
How is the driver? Why are the number of drivers getting reduced?
Because everyone is, booking using Ola or Uber cabs, so the number is reducing.
So all of you are talking about savings on private cars, right?
Yeah.
Let me give you some statistics here. What do you think was the occupancy of a taxi before Uber and Ola came in? If you ask any taxi driver and you ask him what percentage of the time do they have a passenger inside the car, what do you think is the answer is? Make a guess. Yes, Surya.
60 to 70% at max.
At max. Before Uber or Careem came, the taxi had passengers maximum 55 to 60% of the time. With Uber and Careem, the passenger occupancy is up to 90 to 95%. So forget about even private cars. Even just the taxi business, to carry the same number of passengers, you need only 60 to 70% of the original number of cars. Correct? So you already saved 30%. Correct? No. People assume that when you save taxis, you're saving the 30% of the cars and 30% of the drivers and the 30% of the maintenance. Correct? That is not the saving. You don't need 1/3 of the roads where this empty taxis are moving around. So if you have a 3-way highway between Delhi and Bombay, and assume I'm just giving the fundamentals. If you had 3 lanes to carry X number of passengers, today you need only 2 lanes, because 1/3 of the taxis were running on the express highway was empty. You don't need them anymore. So you're already saving 1/3 of the road infrastructure. But this is not full digital. This is not full disruption. You are now talking about only ordering the taxi, him coming to you, you getting into the taxi, and the taxi driver driving the taxi, correct? By 2030 in Dubai, 25% of the taxis will not have any driver. By 2050, almost you will not have driverless taxis. What do you think is the impact when you don't have drivers in the taxi on the economy or the infrastructure or the cost? Make a guess. Go ahead, Renu.
Sir,
You again went on mute.
the cost of the driver means like driver salary cost will be reduced.
Obviously, so you will eliminate 100% of the drivers. But let me give you much more detailed savings. The whole accident insurance gets eliminated. The number of accidents, if it is today, it is 100, it will drop to 1 or 2. 90 to 95% of the accidents that is happening today goes away. So today, if you are paying an insurance of 10,000, the cost of insurance will become 1,000, because the insurance cost is a prediction of the cost to repair an accident. That's how the insurance cost is predicted, right? So if the insurance cost is calculated as 10,000, they assume that all the cars put together per car, I need to spend 10,000. But if the number of accidents are going to drop by 90%, the insurance cost is going to come down. Number one. When human beings are driving the taxi or the cars, you have to leave a space of 2 to 3 car space in between two cars, correct? When you're driving, you don't touch the next car. There is space for at least 2 to 3 cars before the next car in front of you. If it is autonomous, you don't need to leave space. That means in the same road, instead of 1 car, you can have 3 cars, right? So the road infrastructure, we already reduced it by 30% by using Uber and Careem. By making it autonomous, from 70, I have taken 2/3 out of it. That means I've taken another 40% out of it. So from 100, it has come to 70. From 70, it has come to 30. Do you think it is finished? No. When human beings are driving this car, they may be driving it at 50 kilometers an hour, 70 kilometers an hour. When autonomous cars are implemented, the speed is going to be 120, 140, 200 kilometers per hour. I'm just giving you one example, one single example of taxi in which 60 to 70% of the investments, of the time spent on the road, on the infrastructure, on the fuel, on the driver, on the accidents is eliminated. Yeah. So I'm just using this example to give you that how important, how critical is it, because everybody completely underestimates the benefit of digitalization. It is not just digitally doing what we used to do in the past. It is a complete transformation happening in a particular sector, right? So I've just given you that example, right? Hospital. We have done multiple studies for hospitals. Again, I do a lot of work in the Middle East, unfortunately not much in India. When we did studies for multiple hospitals, 30% of the visits were not required at all. People are going to the hospital for no reason. And because of COVID, they couldn't go. They got cured by sitting at home. Now, out of the remaining 70%, half of it could have been done remotely. You don't have to go and visit the doctor at all. You sit at home, you call the doctor will tell you what to do. The medicine is couriered to your house or to your office. You don't have to even take the taxi, go there, stand in the queue, meet the doctor. You will take 4 to 5 hours to go to a doctor, meet the doctor, stand in the queue, get the prescription, go to the place, order the medicine and come back. In Dubai, not happening. You call the doctor over the phone, you have a video conference. Unless he needs to take some blood test, that's a separate issue. I will explain how that is being done. He prescribes the medicine. The medicine is ordered online. The medical shop will deliver it through Careem or Uber, some of the taxi e-hail. They will put it, it comes home. That within half an hour, you log on to the system, you talk to the doctor diagnoses you, he prescribes the medicine is shipped to you, you are sitting at home. The same hospital, the same doctor is able to treat double or 3 times the number of patients they used to treat in the past. with minimal error. Because in the past, when the doctor enters your name, he makes a mistake. The date of birth, he makes a mistake. Now nothing. You are entering your own yourself. When I want to visit a doctor, did you realize that you are entering all the data? When you enter your data, the chances of making a mistake is much lower because you are entering your own date of birth. You are entering your passport number. You are entering your name. You are entering your location. You are entering where the food is to be delivered. You are entering it. You're not telling anybody. You're not telling any other human being. You're telling a system where the food has to come, where the medicine has to come, what is your age. The 80 to 90% of the errors that are made are eliminated by the owner of the data entering the data into the system, right? I'm not saying anything that is new, but I think the impact of these things are quite unknown and people are trying to change strategy and all of that. That is not, we don't have to go that far. You just have to completely understand why and how we can do these things completely differently, right? That's on a hospital. Let me give an example of a real estate. Today, around 30 to 35% of the parking spaces are empty, not used, and still you don't get a space to park. There are many buildings in Dubai that we have automated in which the parking is dynamically allocated. So the system can track your mobile phone. They will know, okay, Thomas is staying in building number A and he's staying in a particular floor. So he will try to find the slot which is closest to the lift, right? Number one. Or for example, if Thomas tells the system that I'm going to go India for a month, I'm not going to come into the lift every single day. They will not block a parking lot which is near the lift because Thomas is going to park the car once for a month and then he's going to go to India. While there are other people who are going in and out every day, who's going to the office every day. So the system dynamically understands what is the profile of the various people, and the people who are coming home every day, once or twice or daily, they will dynamically allocate the parking lot near the lift for such people, and people who are traveling and not staying in the house every day, they give a parking lot by which they have to walk, but they are going to walk for 5 minutes once in a month. You see, there are even situations in which it is possible more in the Middle East, or when you have malls and residential area which is very nearby. If you look at the malls and the residential areas, the occupancy is always very complementary because during the holiday season, people are moving from the house and they go and park inside the shopping mall. Otherwise, all the cars are parked inside the house. But today in Dubai, we have actually implemented the parking for shopping malls and residentials are complementary. So you can actually park in a shopping mall, which is very, very near to your residential area, right? Another thing, the system can sense that you're coming to your house. It can automatically open the door. It can lift the curtain. You can switch on the air conditioning. It can switch on the lights. It can even play the light music and all of that. Similarly, when you're leaving, it senses that there's nobody in the particular apartment by sensing that there's no mobile activity, and they switch off the whole thing automatically. There's approximately 35% energy cost saving, 35% parking space savings and things like that, right? One last example, then I will leave it again open for questions, right? There are telco operations today in the world that there is not a single human being that you can talk to. Because today in iPhone, there is something called digital SIM, eSIM. You don't have to put the physical SIM anymore. So if you just online, you can order a phone, iPhone or Samsung will be delivered to you. The telecom operator will enable it. They don't have to send you a SIM and the phone starts working. If you have any problem, you chat. You don't call anybody. You don't say, okay, dial 1, dial 2, dial 3. This is bullshit stuff, right? You have to keep dialing 1, 2, 3. You'll never get the operator, right? I am sure you have all faced the same issue. Today, there are many telco operators that you cannot talk to a human being. You cannot. Everything is automated. And the fact they're trying to eliminate human beings and they're trying to give automated services, there is significant reduction in the cost, 10 times better customer service, 30 to 40% lower price, and customers are extremely happy. You see where I'm coming from, right? I can go on, but let me stop somewhere here and get into a Q&A, right? Another one last input I want to give is because people when we talk about companies like Amazon or big large organizations like Reliance, Tata, Wipro, we always feel that small companies or individuals are getting marginalized because of e-commerce and digital business model. It is completely wrong. It is completely wrong. Let me again use the same example of Ola to prove it to you that a single small business also can benefit. Because before you had a digital business model, a driver had one taxi, is connected to one taxi, or a hotel is connected to a set of customers. Today, he is connected to the whole world. So you can have one single taxi and be connected to the Uber network or the Careem network, or you can have your own kitchen making tea and connecting it to Zomato, and the whole world can buy your tea from your home. You see, so there is a misconception that when the whole world is getting digitalized, it is more suitable for larger and bigger players. It is actually the other way around. If you are a single player with one house, one restaurant, making only one tea, or driving only one taxi, your overhead has come down significantly, and at the same time you have the benefit of the whole world to do your business, right? So it is actually not compromising on smaller businesses when you move into a completely digital business model, right? So let me stop there and then leave it to you to ask questions, and we can continue the discussions. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for an interactive session. With your permission, we are opening the floor for a quick Q&A session.
Sure.
Guys, please raise your hand and ask the questions. Arjun, ask your question.
Sir, I take the liberty to ask the first question. So there is a famous debate going in the industry. We understand that automations are reducing the costs and they are transforming the businesses. But the other face of the coin, so many jobs are being lost. For example, the drivers in the Dubai example that what you have shared, and even the call center agents because of the chatbots coming into the picture. So how do you see this contrast? So what's your viewpoint on this debate?
The job loss is definitely a very temporary philosophy, right? It is never going to be the impact on economy and the income is actually the opposite of what we are thinking. And I'm sorry to say that the better way to protect people is not to stop digitalization. Give them free money. I have done projects in Saudi Arabia. Let me tell you exactly what I do. We told the hospital to digitalize. It's a government hospital. I actually interacted with the minister. The ministers came and said, Thomas, how can we fire people? I said, what is your problem of firing people? He said, Thomas, they are jobless. I said, is the problem being jobless or the issue that you don't have money? I said, no money. I said, it is better to ask them to sit at home and watch movies and enjoy their life, and you give them the salary and they don't come to the hospital. It is still better for the economy. So to be very blunt, it is complete stupidity. It is complete stupidity to say that because of job loss, we are not automating. If you're worried about compensation, give them money. I agree. I'm not against. I don't want people to be hungry and sitting at home. That's very, very unfair. We people should never do that. We should give importance to that. But that should never be an explanation to say that let us ask people to continue doing job which is not required to be done by labor. That is complete. It is ridiculous, right? And now look at what will really happen. What will really happen is when you look at what we are saying. We are actually double-sided. We are really double-sided. There are people who are doing farming jobs or people who are doing construction, and we people wear this tie and coat and suit and say, you people still have to carry this bloody 100 kilograms of cement. You still have to cut the grass. You still have to sow paddy, and you sit in the air conditioning room and you eat, and they are slogging in the heat, in the sun. That is ridiculous. It can be automated, right? Why do you want in Dubai thousands of people from Bangladesh and Pakistan and Kerala in the sun for 56 degrees centigrade, standing there and burning their cells when it can be done by a machine? Give them money for free, right? Look at I'm actually completely against this philosophy, right? We want these people to continue doing manual labor, and the people who are taking the decision are not doing any manual labor. They're sitting in their armchair and enjoying life and making people to do work, and as if you're giving them job. Give them money. They don't not see, nobody wants a job. I'm not talking of people like us, the people that whom we think we are concerned about. They are not concerned about the job. They are only concerned about the income. So you should still automate and give them the income, and the overall impact is still going to be very positive. And over a period of time, the type of job these people who are doing the labor intensive job that they're doing, they will start doing a much better sophisticated job, right? Instead of driving one taxi, the same taxi driver will control 25 autonomous taxis through a computer, correct? He can sit inside an air-conditioned room. Instead of sitting in the heat, he will control 25 taxis and he will get much more salary. We are doing injustice to them. We are actually cheating them because they are ignorant and they are not educated. That's my view about this thing.
Thank you
This
so
is
much.
all. See, all these things is just to get votes. It's complete bullshit. Seriously, don't get caught into this all these political statements. It is not out of love that they want the farmers to work and get income. No way. They just want to do some shit so that they will have the job and they will get voted and they will be in election and they can continue the crap they are doing.
Agree, sir. Thank you so much for the elaborate answer.
Aniruddha, please ask your question.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Sir, I wanted to ask that you were just now telling about the automation and all these things that will reduce the labor and it will increase the smart work. But sir, don't you think that in a country like India, where the population is, the number is increasing day by day, so the automation will reduce jobs?
No, you will have more outcome. See, this is again, it's a completely wrong concept, right? See, today, let us take something like producing rice. Correct? Now,
Okay.
Today you are producing 100 kilograms of rice. If you automate, you can produce 1,000 kilograms of rice and you can export. So it is not about automating and reducing the number of jobs. It is automating and increasing the outcome. It is again a completely wrong logic. You are saying that let us not automate agriculture so that 100 people, so we need 100 kilograms of rice. And let us not automate it so that 100 kilograms of rice is produced by 100 farmers. Automate it. I'm not asking 100 farmers to be reduced to 50 farmers to produce 100 kilograms. I'm saying the same 100 farmers, instead of producing 100 kilograms, should produce 200 kilograms of rice and export it to Pakistan, export it to US, export it to some other country where producing rice is costlier. There are many countries in the world who have automated and producing rice cheaper than India. It's bullshit.
No, sir, we can't stop automation. Like it will just stop the growth of the country, and we have to automate and we have to grow. But that there are a lot of pros for automation, and it will definitely increase the outcome. It will increase the export of the country also.
I understand the point you're saying. That the point you're saying is very, very valid. That jobs will reduce. I'm only that point that number of jobs will reduce is 100% valid statement. The only point I'm making is it is short term and it is better to pay them money than asking them to do something that is irrelevant. That's the point I'm trying to say. I'm not saying, see, I'm not saying that we should, okay, whenever we are talking about jobs, we are not talking about jobs, we are talking about salary. Let us be very clear on the fundamental of what we are talking about.
The job means
Correct?
salary.
We are, see, when we are worried about a farmer or a laborer losing a job, we are not talking about losing the job. We are talking about he is losing his income. Even if you pay the income and automate it, it is far better. I have gone through every single sector. I've gone through telecoms, I've gone through agriculture, I've gone through manufacturing, I've gone through real estate, I've gone through hospitals, I've gone through everything. It is better to keep paying them and ask them to sit at home.
Yes, so that is a valid point, and we can do that, and it will not affect the growth also. So it is
Correct.
definitely a good point.
But it is very difficult to implement it. But if you keep saying things are difficult, then nothing will happen, right? And then another COVID will come and kill the whole population.
Currently, it is difficult to implement automation, but within 5 years or maybe 6 years, it will be a necessity.
See, let me give you, see, there are examples in front of us. I'm from Kerala, I'm from Trivandrum. Even today, see, look at the argument that we are having today. Today, when I go to Trivandrum and try to take a Uber taxi, the other taxi drivers throw a stone on the Uber taxi and break the window, so that the taxi driver keeps the job. Is that what we are saying? Now, let me explain to you the taxi driver, how stupid it is. The taxi driver in the Trivandrum airport, he makes 2 trips a day and he charges around 1,000 rupees and he gets 2,000 rupees for 2 trips. He's just working for 2 hours. The remaining 8 hours, he's sitting there and drinking tea. 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees he makes. An Uber taxi can make 3,000 to 4,000 rupees and he will make 8 to 10 trips. Instead of paying 1,000 rupees for a trip, I pay 300 rupees, so I save 700. The taxi driver who makes 2,000 makes 3,000, and let him go and do some other job. What we are arguing is equivalent to blocking Uber and Careem to come to the airport and pick up a passenger, which is even today happening in Trivandrum airport, which I find it ridiculous.
No, so that is true. It happens in Delhi also.
Correct. Let me tell you what we did in Dubai, by the way. See, in Dubai, it was actually banned. The ruler of Dubai banned Careem and Uber. And if Careem and Uber was there was a 5,000 dirham fine. 5,000 dirham is 1 lakh rupees. The conversion is 1:20 for dirham. So the fine was 5,000 dirham, and they used to fine 1 lakh rupees, right? And the Dubai government still banned Uber and Careem. And I had the privilege to actually make a presentation to the ruler of Dubai. And I had the privilege to explain to the ruler of Dubai that what you're doing doesn't make any sense. You're trying to keep the taxi income to the government, because the Road Transport Authority, which is running the taxis, keeps the income and it goes to the government. I could very clearly calculate to the ruler of Dubai saying that you are trying to save money on the taxi, but look at the number of roads I can reduce for you. Instead of spending $10 billion or building highways, you can spend only $5 billion for the highway. And then he got convinced and he agreed to the logic, and Careem and Uber was approved. It was based on our presentation to the ruler of Dubai to get Careem and Uber approved. The point is that we are not making the right analysis. See, again, I'm sorry to take the same example. To keep a driver engaged, and you have to block the driver, you have to block the car, you have to block the parking space in the airport. Is it not better to ask the driver to sleep at his home? Correct. He's anyway sleeping in the taxi, right? Out of 10 hours, he's driving for 2 hours, 8 hours, he's sleeping in the taxi. What I'm saying is, instead of having the taxi in the airport and sleeping there and wasting the parking lot, you go and sleep at home and we will pay you the money. That's what I'm saying.
No, sir, I completely understand. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for answering all the questions from a very curious audience. This brings us to end of this engaging and interactive session in our MSS International CEO Conclave 2021, Enabling Change and Facilitating Growth. The key takeaways from this session were: digital transformation is not only about digitalizing the infrastructure, it's transforming the user and customer experience. Data is becoming more and more important for government and organization for decision making. We are sure the batch would have gained lots of insights. Once again, on behalf of Accelerare XPGDM, we would like to thank you, our speaker, Mr. Thomas Kurubulla, for sparing your valuable time today in gracing our conclave event. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed
Thank
the
you so much,
discussion.
sir.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. If you can just look for Thomas Kuruvilla, Arthur D. Little, I'm available on LinkedIn. I'm happy to get connected and continue the discussions. Yeah. And again, I just wanted to make one closing remark is whatever I said is my own opinion. I'm not expecting anybody to consider that as something right or wrong, because these things are still evolving, right? And what I may be saying may be wrong in another 2 to 3 years time. So these are just my own inputs and thoughts based on the experience we have so far, and all of you should have your own judgment, and that is the process of education, right? So this is just as an input versus as a recommendation, whatever we discussed during the class. Again, thank you very much for the questions. It was amazing to interact with you. Thank you. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right.